for those that are not members, it's fine for you to stay on if you'd like to participate in our business meeting. In fact, we hope you do and get interested more and join us. So what we're going to talk about is some of our accomplishments this past very difficult year, but we're really excited about what we're doing. And amazingly, we've been able to do it despite all the downsides that we faced with the pandemic. And first, I want to highlight the work of our archives committee and our wonderful committee chair, Jackie Cavalier, and our archives director, who's got us going the right path, Sinead Bly. So tell us about our archives project, Sinead.
With pleasure. Jackie, do you want to kick us off?
I'm actually going to introduce you, Sinead, since John already gave us our introduction, and I want to have you be able to present some of the fabulous stuff that you and Callie and our interns have been doing. So I'm going to turn it right over to you and the presentation.
Great. I'll just share my screen and get us started. Okay, so I'm going to stick to my script and be very quick about this because I've got lots to kind of show you guys. So in brief, the Battle of Homestead Foundation archive has been working really hard this year, and I really want to thank everybody for all their hard work. Callie and Jackie, our new interns, Molly and Cassidy. So to date, we have accessioned into our possession 4 collections comprising 33 boxes. And they have been given to us by Mike Stout, Charlie Mcallister, Mark Fallon, and Jim Homan. So the work done so far, the collections are housed in Guardian storage in Homestead, so they are safe and in great condition there. In spring 2020, the project went remote, like we all did. So everything is done remotely now, or in solitary confinement, basically. We all work by ourselves. Digital records management equipment, applications and storage has been purchased along with digitalization equipment. In fall 2020, Jackie, our archives director, and myself, our archives chair and myself, and Callie, our archives project coordinator, welcomed Molly, who's on the call, I think. Thanks for joining us, Molly, and Cassidy. And since they've come on board, we've been going at warp speed. It's fantastic. We have finished our conservation survey, so we can see everything that needs to be conserved, basically, of the physical material. Amazingly, the team, we have pulled together all of the box lists, all accession records, collection level description, indexes, all done now, so the archives are fully searchable through that way. So basically, I'd just like to give you an overview of each of the collections. I think it's the first time we've had the chance to show everybody. Mike Stout, I'm not going to do introductions because you all know these people probably way better than I will, but I do know their collections, and Mike's incredible collection runs from 1893 to 2019. It's an incredible array of objects, including USWA medals, badges, buttons, banners, files on union grievances, union and activist campaigns, and research, including that of his new book, Homestead Steel Mill, The Final 10 Years. These provide an invaluable and personal insight into labor history, activism, oral history, environmentalism in North America and in Europe and worldwide. But also very crucially, the social fabric of the Homestead region. I can only really name a couple of objects of note from his collection. He really generously donated us Arthur G. Burgoyne's The First History of the Homestead Lockout, its first edition, 1893. Extremely grateful for that, Mike. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of buttons, like this rare Union Jews ones. These are Callie's favorites. These are from World War II. Union Jews buttons. These are my personal favorites. Oh, I'm paused for some reason. I love these ones. These are incredible Black Panther button Gus Hall and Jarvis Tyner Communist Party candidacy for president in 1972 and 76. Linda Jennis and Andrew Pulley, Socialist Workers presidential candidacy in 1972 also. And then full range of Occupy buttons. It's just incredible. Some Rosemary Trump's medals in there from conferences. And the gem of the collection, well, there's many gems, but one of a few, is the full print edition of 1397 Rank and File newspaper, founded by Michelle McMills, contributed by, edited and printed by Mike between 1977 and 1987. And I go down a rabbit hole every time I try and look at these. I just, I absolutely adore these papers. Next up, we have Charlie Mcallister. Charlie's collection runs from 1890 to 2017. Overall, the collection is of huge importance to labour and civil rights history by covering the vast array of Mcallister's interests and work in relation to topics including Monsignor Charles' own rice, which makes up the largest portion of this collection, papers on the workings of Pittsburgh unions, research concerning unionization around the globe, and exhaustive research on the Battle of Homestead, historical markers, and his book, The Point of Pittsburgh. So one really interesting item of note, this was chosen by Cassidy, is this amazing photograph. This kind of lives in his file along with his research for labor priest Monsignor Charles' own rice and the Workers of Pittsburgh, which he published in 1992. And you see Dr. Benjamin Spock, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Monsignor Charles' own rice marching here together circa 1967. Also one of my favorites, the Great Battle of Homestead 1892 coloring book from 1993. Beautiful little copies of Waco News from 1925 to 1931. These are very interesting too. Publications, Homestead 1892, an interactive reconstruction of the Battle of Homestead from 3 viewpoints, circa 1985. So that was published by Charlie himself and Steel Valley Printers, which was Mike's gig, and the small collection of rank and file newspapers. This is one of my favorite ones, this little cartoon. I won't get into it, I'm afraid. You can all come and try and have a look at some of these things at a later date. I'm going to whiz through to Mark Fallon's collection. Mark's collection spans from the 1920s to the 2000s. It contains historic photographs that adorn the walls of Chido's Tavern, including this poster from Norma Ray from 1979, and as well as innumerable pages of valuable research covering all kinds of social and civic histories from Homestead and the Pittsburgh area, from its very first families all the way through to recent history, social history of the town. Also various church congregation directories going back generations, and giving a sense of long-held importance of Homestead and the West Mifflin area, its community support and activism. So these are really interesting civic teaching aids from 1993 Beyond Diversity, which was teaching kids about some of Pittsburgh African-American sons and daughters. Photographs from Homestead in the 1950s and 60s, more than 1,000 35mm slides he's given us, showing local landmarks as they were in the 60s and 70s, historical and vacation sites around the US, some from the 50s, really interesting stuff. Also great, these were from Chido's also. 1920 and 1921 Homestead High School women's basketball team. Did you know there was one? Whose team photo, I think you can see some girls wearing pearls, which is great. And one of the gems in the collection is this 2 beautiful photo albums from 1930 detailing each aspect of the Christie Park Works in McKeesport. And then we move on to Jim Homan. Jim's collection is incredible as well. Jim has been documenting the Battle of Homestead Foundation from its formation in 1989. His collection of films, documentaries, documentation of events and conferences, outtakes and edits of film images, and rare books runs from 1924 to 2009. The material serves as a reference library, an important documentation into the incredible landscape of labor history in Pennsylvania and more widely of the United States. Jim's collection demonstrates the brevity of his own interests and that of the Battle of Homestead Foundation, and gives an invaluable insight not just to the trajectory of the organization from its beginning, but its fascinating outtakes. So some really interesting ones. You can see in the background there, I haven't put them in for the slideshow, but we've got The Last Night at Chido's Tavern in September 2005. Jim's beautiful documentation of the American Legion murals in Lilly, PA. Very generously donated John Bochner's William Kelly, A True Story of the So-Called Bessemer Process, 1924. That's the first edition. A great representation of the work of Steffi DeMike, including The River Ran Red and Women of Steel. And one of my favorites, With Babies and Banners, is in there too, 1979, documentary about Women's Emergency Brigade in the 1930s. So what's next? Project planning and funding applications. Jackie and I have been doing lots of kind of research and funding applications in the hopes we can bring pop-up exhibitions of the archives and conservation of the physical archive. So that's the next step. I'll be working with the interns, putting everything in proper archival boxes and making sure it's conserved for the future. Preservation of the activities of the organization, that's next up too. I'll be working with Jackie on that to collect Charlie's Monday markers, all of this digital content we are now producing. I want to make sure that's saved. Podcasts, work past, present and future. Preservation of the programs, including this one we're on right now. And then ultimately digitization of the collection, which is really, really important. And to build an online search tool, basically, so we can kind of bring a larger community, you know, into the workings of our archive and take advantage of that.
Thank you so much, Sinead. I just want to say that it is such an honor and a pleasure to be able to work with Sinead, our archives director, who has spearheaded this project so effectively. I hope you can see through the images just the tremendous amount of coordination, organization, and work, not to mention the fact Callie, who is our archives, Callie Sheets, who is our archives coordinator. We're lucky to have two wonderful archives interns, as Sinead mentioned, Cassidy and Molly. And even since March, the Archives Committee, as well as Sinead and Callie and Molly and Cassidy, have continued to work and worked diligently. And for a volunteer organization and the small organization that we are, I would like to quickly say, as a historian looking at other archives and special collections projects, we're so, far beyond what most organizations of our size and scope typically are. So thank you so much for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. And if anybody would like to see additional information or materials, we'll gladly share it. And I know Sinead will be happy to keep everybody abreast of our progress as we move forward with the Battle of Homestead Foundation Archives and Special Collections. So thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Sinead. That's a wonderful presentation. When we form our Labor Center for History of Labor and the Future of Work, we'll have our archives ready to go and display. And thank you so much. We really appreciate it. You've done a wonderful job.
Thank you. And I have to say thank you, Jackie. We would be lost without you. You have been absolutely integral. Thanks a mil, guys.
Now we're going to move on. I hate to do it, but we're going to move on to the program committee. I don't hate moving on to the program committee, though, because we have a wonderful leader that stepped in and pulled us through an extremely difficult year. And it's Suzanne Donsky. And Suzanne, thank you so much. And can you tell us a little bit about what went on and what we're going to do this year?
Yes, thank you, John. And I can't tell you how much that experience of watching the Archives Committee report just sent chills up my spine. It's beautiful stuff, and I'm just so happy to be part of an organization that's doing such good work. I want to tell you a little bit about our programming efforts for last year. I want to give you a glimpse of where we are now and to take a look at where we hope to go in 2021 with respect to our programming efforts. In 2020, we found ourselves in a strange position that everyone has referenced, and that was essentially go virtual or go home. And I'm happy to say that the Battle of Homestead Foundation rose to the occasion, and we successfully transitioned from in-person programs at the historic pump house to online programs. The approach was multifaceted. It included monthly programs via Zoom, as well as a weekly video event with historian Charlie Mcallister. You've heard reference to Charlie's Monday Marker. Our bi-weekly virtual breakfast meetings on Zoom, since we could no longer meet in person at the Eaton Park at the waterfront. And the launching of our very own podcast called Essential Work, which you'll hear more about in a minute. Last year, our monthly programs covered a wide range of topics and involved a lot of presenters from different fields. They were all directly related to the mission of our organization, however, and that is to examine and celebrate the past, the present, and the future of work. Toward that end, we presented a panel discussion of the 2020 Oscar-winning Best Feature documentary called American Factory. And that panel included the film's directors, as well as others, a book talk by author Damian Dressick about his recently published novel concerning the 1922 coal strike in Wilmerding, PA. His book is called 40 Patchtown. A centennial celebration of women's suffrage through our program 1920 to 2020, How We Took the Vote, a conversation about suffrage and strategies. We had the annual Kleiman Lecture in conjunction with the United Steelworkers, which was an amazing evening with author Dr. Amy Aronson about her fabulous biography of Crystal Eastman, a diehard suffragist and a pioneer in worker safety. We presented a compelling panel forum on the dangers of plastic consumption and its alternatives called Protecting Ourselves from the Plastics Invasion. And we had an evening with the incomparable Mike Stout, union and environmental activist, musician and author of Homestead Steel Mill, The Final 10 Years. The silver lining of the 2020 virtual programming is that it allowed us to enlarge our audience base well beyond our traditional in-person gatherings at the pump house. And we're really pleased to have reached so many new and different people with inclusive and wide-ranging virtual programs. So that's where we've been in the past year. Where are we today? Well, the hardworking program committee is currently collecting program proposals for 2021. And you will find our program proposal form on the website. We'll put a link in the chat. I encourage you all to take a look at two things. One, the mission statement of the organization, which is also on the website. It'll help you think about what programs you and people you know might find compelling. And then share your program suggestions by completing the proposal form, which you can also find linked on the website. Keep in mind, the deadline for submission of program proposals is February 15, 2021. So you actually have a nice amount of time in which to pull your ideas together for program proposals. Turning now to where our programs are headed for 2021, we will continue to broaden our reach by seeking community partners for our monthly programs, as we did last year. Our virtual biweekly breakfast meetings will still take place every other Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. via Zoom. And new this year will be an occasional evening program called the BHF Dessert Meeting in place of the breakfast meeting, so that folks who work during the day can also attend and participate. These gatherings are a refreshing time of camaraderie in the truest sense of the word, where you'll get lots of shared information about upcoming events, important issues related to workers' rights, safety, racism, women's rights, the environment, social justice, community action. It really is a place to be where you can be comfortable and learn a lot. Also looking forward to 2021, I want to invite everyone to consider volunteering with the program effort. Even if you don't want to submit your own program proposal, there are other ways you can help. Are you, for example, familiar with running virtual meetings via Zoom, perhaps through your business? Or perhaps a few of you can volunteer to serve as a Zoom host for our events. Do you have a skill in editing videos or in editing recorded audio? If so, we could use your help. These are examples of discrete tasks that won't take too much of your time, but will be of great help in our effort to produce quality programs for the Battle of Homestead Foundation. Join us, please, in these efforts. And I'm going to have my email address in the chat. You can send me an email directly at any time if you have a program suggestion and if you'd like to volunteer to help us with our efforts. Now I'm going to introduce the Essential Work podcast host, Nathan Ruggles, who's going to talk a little about the exciting podcast initiative. Nathan?
Thank you so much, Suzanne. You know, it's stories and struggles, it's people and perspectives, it's interviews, it's commentaries, it's a look at the most important issues people face on the job through this unique lens of history and time and music. That is Essential Work, exploring the past, present, and future of jobs. Begun last year in the midst of the pandemic, we're so very fortunate to have the excellent Patty DeMarco on board, hosting Pathways to an Economy that works for all of us. She brings to bear her experience addressing labor, environment, and health with some amazing guests. We have regular commentators, Rosemary Trump and Charlie Mcallister, giving their knowledge and their perspectives. We have Larry McCullough providing the latest news from the foundation. He also closes out each episode with a song selection inspired by our feature interview. You can check us out at essentialworkpodcast.org. That link will be in the chat. You can find past episodes there, listen there, or on the most popular podcast apps and platforms. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc. And finally, you know, this podcast is not possible without a very supportive and engaged program committee. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you to the folks who give their time and talents, Brittany Sheets, Jason Kendall, Angela Bachman. It has not been possible also without the support from the foundation members and funders. So if you like what you hear, you know, whether you have a few dollars or a few thousand or know someone who does, please consider supporting the podcast. We had great news just now today about funding. Thank you, Rich Stumko. Let's keep it coming, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nathan. And if you haven't listened to the podcast yet, do yourself a favor. Go on the website and click on the link.
And thank you, Suzanne and Nathan. A great report. Check out the podcast and help us out. Now we're going to talk about communications. Before we do, I do want to recognize one of our members who was our original Mr. Communications, and for him, we would never be where we are. Without him, we would never be where we are today. I'm talking about Jerry Fitzgibbon, who's on with us tonight, who for more than 6 years began our digital presence, developed our initial website and brought us through to where we are today. And Jerry retired last November and graciously handed over and helped the transition to a new team to work on our website. Jerry will never be replaced. His contributions could never be afforded if we were paying him a decent wage, but he volunteered and he kept us going and brought us where we are today. Jerry, I want to recognize you and hope everyone can give him a clap or a wave or something. Jerry, thank you so much for all your help. Now I want to introduce Larry McCullough, who is the head of our communications committee and has brought a real marketing and wonderful presence to our communications effort. Larry, give us a little sample of what the communications committee is doing.
Okay, I actually have a written report, kind of old school, but I got to tell you something. The committee's work this last year has, of necessity, involved a lot of transition, but this is obviously evidence of how well it works. Mostly it's about keeping in communication with all of you. Our programs last year featured several national speakers, global topics of urgent relevance, and that got us motivated to really kind of kick our social media up a notch. And really just use it to a fuller extent to publicize all the great things we're doing. And we've reached a lot of new people. Some of you are here actually on this program tonight. With the inauguration of Charlie's Monday Marker, the video series, and our Essential Work podcast, we had additional ways of connecting the foundation with our mission and with the public, with what's really happening now. Our e-newsletter, which we have a lot of subscribers and we're picking them up also. Our YouTube channel has been, we're filling up with more stuff. You can find all the Charlie's Monday Markers there as well, and a lot of other great moments from past events. And lastly, the website is being updated to include more information, especially with the great archival material coming in. And look for that transition to be completed in the spring. And that's the communication report for now.
Thank you, Larry. Really appreciate all your help. Hey, folks, we're looking for volunteers to serve on the communications committee. That committee will meet monthly and will discuss the range of our communications, and we need people that can fill niches that we have for notifying neighborhood calendars and all the rest. So consider volunteering for our communications committee. Now it's time to talk about money. And we're going to hear from Rosemary Trump, our treasurer.
Yes, very good. Well, thank you very much. And in the interest of keeping it brief, I will share with you that if you do want a detailed financial report, all you need to do is to write to our battleofhomestead@gmail.com email address and request a copy, and I will either email it or scan it to you or and mail it to you. But in terms of for the fiscal year of January 1 to December 31, 2020, we took in a little over $35,000, but we expended a little over $45,000. So that we really did have a net deficit of about $10,000. So, you know, the fact that, President Trump indicated that they were going to make a sizable donation to our Treasury is very much appreciated. But we were able to take out of our funds that are for purposes of education and archival purposes for interns, the $10,000, so that we ended up, and so in terms of how we spent that money in terms of revenue, we received a little over $18,000 in grants, and thanks to all of you, donations of almost $9,000. And in terms of the major expenditures, we did spend a sizable portion on the archive project, and as you see, as the report showed, it's really paid off in spades. $21,808 was expended for that purpose. And the administration will cost us another $7,000, and labor education, like the podcast and so forth, we spent another approximately $8,000. So consequently, the next slide, we can show that we have a total of $147,192 because $18,662 is in the general fund, the semi-restricted labor education fund, $57,803, and the grant fund that we received of the original $75,000, we're down to $68,607, and we had $1,989 in our PayPal account. So the good news is that we're off to a great start. Thank you all for re-upping. For many of you gave more than the traditional membership amount, and Steffi, I'm looking forward is going to be promoting the necessity to continue our fundraising efforts so that we can grow our program from $35,000 or $45,000 to maybe $60,000 or $70,000 in 2021. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rosemary. Now we're going to move to the nominating committee chaired by Dan Beaton, who's conducted our board election. Dan?
Sorry, I have to unmute. Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. So, yes, we just concluded the board elections. Thank you for participating, everybody who voted. We had a total of 36 ballots cast. We had 8 candidates running for 8 slots, so it was not a very suspenseful election this time. All 8 candidates were elected, and that included, we had 7 who were running for re-election. They were terming out and running for re-election. That was Jackie Cavalier, Suzanne Donsky, President John Hare, Charlie Mcallister, Brittany Sheets, Treasurer Rosemary Trump, and Kelly Vereb. They were all re-elected, and we're welcoming our new board member, Jay Hornack. So a round of applause for all of them.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. We appreciate it. Our turnout wasn't great, but it's the first time we've done voting, digital voting, rather than in-person voting. So we'll work to improve that turnout. I'm sure that, but I'm encouraged because incumbents, for the most part, decided to run again. And, you know, the pay is not great. In fact, there isn't any. And the work is good, but it's sometimes difficult. So we really appreciate all the contributions of our board members, present and past, and thank you very much. Now we come to a